Hello, and thanks again for joining me. This week, we opened the Federal Workforce Career Center for workers impacted by the shutdown and cuts to federal programs and departments. This new facility will serve displaced or former federal workers, but also those who may have worked for contractors, NGOs, nonprofits, or vendors who serve the federal government. To our knowledge, this is the first center in the nation operated by a large jurisdiction like ours to support displaced federal workers through personalized services and programs. Setting up a center like this does not happen overnight. Earlier in the spring, we foresaw the need to help our residents struggling under this federal administration. I asked the County Council to devote $700,000 to this project, and I want to thank them for their support. The Mobilize Montgomery website was also launched to help coordinate help for job seekers. It brings together a wide array of organizations, including the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, the Department of Labor, Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, and the Maryland Women's Business Center, to name a few. For this collaboration, Montgomery County is home to a substantial number of federal employees, more than 70,000 at the start of the year. This instability has significant repercussions for our community. The Federal Workforce Career Center is located at 11510 Georgia Avenue in Wheaton. The center, operated by WorkSource Montgomery, is designated to support transitioning executives, senior managers, and highly skilled professionals. It offers tailored services like executive career coaching, advanced resume and LinkedIn support, and crucial federal to private sector transition support. Job seekers can also access guidance for launching into self-employment through our entrepreneurship support. This center symbolizes Montgomery County's ongoing commitment to stand with federal workers and contractors, ensuring that they don't have to navigate these changes alone. This is all being necessitated because the president has decided to decimate access to health care and raise the cost at the same time, which will negatively impact millions of Americans. And the sole reason to do this is to use the savings created by hurting Americans is to fund the tax cuts for his billionaire friends. Of course, this attack only pays part of the bill. Other savings come from dumping FEMA's responsibilities on the states and off of the federal government. NIH, NIST, and FDA are targeted for major cuts that will serve to curtail their research into causes of and cures for illnesses that take a tremendous toll each year for millions of Americans. They pretend climate change doesn't exist, that emissions aren't harmful, and they're stifling wind and solar to increase our reliance on coal, a true destroyer of the environment. None of this has anything to do with efficiency. No one announced how we'd have better ways of doing things that are faster or more efficient, because they actually would have had to created thoughtful processes whose objective was improvement. Crippling NIH's ability to determine causes of diseases creates a free pass for industries that want to go back to pre-World War I America, where the environment, people's lives, and workers' rights counted for nothing, and only the interests of millionaires and billionaires mattered. The only thought the president and his henchmen consider is whether or not a decision serves the interests of the wealthy and powerful. We remain committed to supporting our residents and workforce and in ensuring Montgomery County's economy remains strong and resilient. Interested job seekers should register on the Maryland Workforce Exchange and complete the FWCC intake form to get it started. For help or general questions, you can call 240-283-1509 or email fwcc@worksourcemontgomery.com. A recent poll released a few weeks ago by the Banner Montgomery found that the most pressing issue among our residents is the cost of housing, ahead of the economy and crime. More than 80% of those surveyed stated that the county's lack of affordable housing is a problem. Note the affordable part. Housing has been a challenge for a long time, and when I became county executive, I knew that the housing crisis was one challenge our community needed to address. That is why we've continued to spend record amounts on affordable housing in each of my recent operating budgets. The Affordable Housing Pipeline Report helps us track our progress. The latest report, which revises fiscal year 2025 figures and takes us through the first quarter of FY26, shows that the county has significantly increased the number of affordable homes it supports through its financial investments. I'm pleased that we have increased production and preservation by 87% over the last 2 years. That is incredible progress, and I want to acknowledge the work of our Department of Housing and Community Affairs on this success. In FY25, we invested $108.3 million on 25 projects that supported creating or preserving 1,827 affordable homes. The number of units created or preserved compared to 2024 increased by 61%. In the first 3 months of FY26, the county invested a total of $24.2 million across 3 projects to produce or preserve an additional 462 affordable units. The counties entered into or maintained existing payment in lieu of taxes or pilot agreements for 2 of these projects, with an estimated total annual value of nearly $500,000. When you combine all of our projects from the last 3 fiscal years, 58 projects were created or preserved, accounting for 4,397 affordable homes. We've seen that we cannot rely on the market alone to produce enough affordable housing. It simply does not create enough to meet the needs of our community, or any community, frankly. There's plenty of demand, but the private sector is not interested in meeting the demand of people with more normal means. This is why we've committed more than $316 million since FY23 to preserve, protect, or produce affordable housing throughout the county. In just the last 15 months alone, that's more than 2,200 units. These projects support older adults, people in mental health recovery, working families, and first-time homebuyers. We're also ensuring that affordable units being built and preserved are 2- and 3-bedroom units for families, as well as creating opportunities for homeownership. We need to make these investments if we want to be a community where people aren't priced out by rising costs. I encourage you to read our Affordable Housing Pipeline Report at montgomerycountymd.gov/DHCA. Last week, the Trump administration canceled 12 Department of Energy grants totaling nearly $88 million in Maryland. Nationwide, DOE canceled $7.5 billion in grants to Democratic-leaning blue states. I'd like to explain some of what these cuts mean here in Maryland, but first I just want to point out that never have presidents of any party decided what gets funded and what doesn't get funded depending on what state you live in. FEMA money went to red states and blue states when there were hurricanes. All of these funds were spread across projects around the country, not based on what you voted for or who you voted for in the last election. These cuts hit home, including funds to BG&E for grid reliability and battery storage, research at the University of Maryland on technologies on cold climate heat pumps and industrial emissions reductions, and a Maryland company worked on improving building energy efficiency. These cancellations ripple through our community. BGE investments in grid reliability, for instance, may instead be borne by our local BG&E ratepayers in higher electricity prices. In a time of rising electricity prices and economic uncertainty, local electric ratepayers cannot afford to subsidize partisan attacks on clean energy and innovation. Our federal government should instead continue to support an energy system with upgrades and technological breakthroughs. This week we celebrated Active Aging Week, which allows us to recognize and support older adults who continue to stay active, engaged, and connected in our community. Our signature event, Go, Grow, and Get Active, occurred on Monday, October 6th at the Nancy H. Dasick North Potomac Community Recreation Center. It featured workshops, wellness activities, and a resource fair with local organizations that help older adults and caregivers stay healthy and connected. We support these efforts because here in Montgomery County, we want to help people age in place if that's what they want to do. Devoting resources to help promote inclusion, dignity, and opportunities for everyone at every age shows how much we value everyone in this community. Contact the Aging and Disability Resource Unit at 240-777-3000 with any questions you might have. We're committed to supporting older adults in Montgomery County by providing the resources they need to remain active, connected, and independent. Learn more about our activities through our Recreation Department and register for activities through Active Montgomery. I want to thank everyone who participated, volunteered, and helped make Active Aging Week a success. You again showed the strength and vitality of our older residents bring to this community daily. I also want to thank Maryland Governor Wes Moore for showing decisive leadership in the face of the federal government shutdown by acting swiftly to protect the well-being of the state's residents. Last Friday, he visited the Silver Springs Center to put a spotlight on the kind of social safety net actions performed by our county staff and partners. Governor Moore underlined the human impact of the shutdown as they risked the loss of critical health and human services, public health programs, and income supports. He recognized the serious economic threat posed by the shutdown, noting that if Democrats don't fight these changes, as many as 190,000 Marylanders could face an average increase of 68% in their monthly premiums. In response to this crisis, Governor Moore vowed to use state resources to provide stability. He announced the state government would continue funding certain federal programs. Specifically, he ensured that federal programs administered by the state, including Medicaid, SNAP, and TANF, will continue supporting working families. He also committed to providing greater flexibility to Head Start programs and guaranteeing that veterans maintain access to essential resources. Governor Moore also announced that the state would use money to cover certain state employee salaries, which are typically paid with federal funds. Moreover, the Maryland Department of Labor will launch a federal shutdown loan program. This program will offer a no-interest $700 loan to essential workers who are not being paid and are ineligible for unemployment insurance. According to the governor's press release, the money will help meet expenses like rent and groceries and must be repaid within 45 days of the shutdown ending. The governor also called upon landlords, mortgage servicers, and utilities to do everything possible to alleviate the burden on impacted Marylanders, extending support even to those like federal contractors who may not qualify for specific state protections. These strong and comprehensive measures are what we need. Governor Moore's dedication to maintaining critical services and financial support across Maryland during his period of federal uncertainty is admirable, even though we all wish it were not needed and that the shutdown ends soon. Montgomery County is proud to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday of October. We join a growing number of communities across the country in choosing to honor the people who lived on this land long before the European explorers arrived. And in doing so, we move away from celebrating Columbus Day. By now, I hope more people realize that Christopher Columbus was not a hero. His arrival marked the beginning of centuries of violence, exploitation, enslavement, and displacement of indigenous people. That's not something we should celebrate. Because these lands were not discovered, they were already home to a thriving, complex group of societies with deep histories and cultures. The European settlers did not come in peace. They came to conquer and remove the peoples who lived here. The truth is that the mistreatment of indigenous communities didn't end centuries ago. It continues today in many forms. And we have a responsibility to acknowledge that and do better moving forward. America's history with our native populations is marked by a trail of broken treaties and broken promises. Native peoples were even displaced from the places they were forced to relocate to if white people found that the land was rich in natural resources that they wanted to exploit and profit from. So much for the Native Americans that had been put there. Add to that our mistreatment of tribal associations over the years, and it's not a good history. Here in Montgomery County, we value all the people who live here. Among our many communities are more than 30,000 Marylanders with indigenous roots and nearly 7 million nationwide. Indigenous Peoples Day is a time to reflect, to learn, and to recommit ourselves to justice and equity for all. We can't change the past, but we can choose to tell the truth about it. So that's a wrap for today. I hope you're all hanging in there, and I'll be back again next week. Take care.